The Breadwinner. This is from the studio in Kilkenny that brought us Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, adapted from Deborah Ellis's children's young adults book, directed by Nora Twomey, and I think it's just wonderful. It's set in Taliban-era Kabul around the turn of the century. We meet a young girl who is in the street selling goods with her father. He was a teacher by trade. He lost a leg in the war with the Russians. They are struggling to get by. Material goods are evidently very, very scarce. But knowledge and learning and storytelling offer sustenance. And he is raising his daughters to understand the history of their country and the power of stories. Here's a clip. So he's teaching all this stuff to his family. Then he's arrested by the Taliban as a subversive for speaking back. And suddenly the household find themselves unable to eat because it's a mother, 2 daughters, and then a baby brother. And women are not allowed to leave the house unchaperoned. And there's apparently nothing they can do about this. So Poana, our central character, cuts her hair, puts on the clothes of her deceased brother, and ventures out into the markets disguised as a boy and discovers, in that magic carpet ride, a whole new world. And suddenly what she's told as a fellow traveller says, when you're a boy, you can go anywhere you want. And the story is then about her attempt to look after the father. She becomes the breadwinner, and also to get to her father in prison. And I thought it was a wonderful piece for a number of reasons. Firstly, the style of the animation is really interesting. The streets and the markets through which our heroine ventures are rendered really realistically. I mean, almost photorealistically sometimes, but also filtered through a kind of poetic haze. There's this thing called the honey glow of the light of the mornings, and it's beautifully done, but it's very, very realistically rendered. The characters themselves, their faces are done quite simply, in which like a single line on a face can indicate sadness or tiredness or anger, but they're in this very real landscape. Then when you have the story within the story, which is the storytelling, which tells us about the history of the country, but also conjures this parallel narrative to run alongside the heroine's journey, which is a narrative of a young boy going up against a dreadful elephant king who has stolen the seeds from the village. That's all rendered in this kind of cutout animation, which is like these circling cutout forms. And the two styles of animation are very, very distinct. So you always know exactly where you are in which world, but also they counterpoint each other rather beautifully, that one of them is kind of a fantastical history and the other is very much a realistic present day. And by bringing the two of them together, you get this sense of mythology, but also of your contemporary politics and a very sort of, down-to-earth realist feel. Some people have talked about, for example, The Bicycle Thieves as being a reference point, which I think is a good reference point. So you get that. You also have this wonderful score, which is by the Danas, by Michael and Jeff Dana, which mixes Eastern instrumentation with kind of Western orchestration to bring these two worlds together. On the one hand, you have the stuff which is in the streets, which is very, very sparse. Again, almost giving you a sense of a documentary feel. On the other hand, when you've got these storytelling sequences, much more lushly orchestrated, much sort of a kind of weirdly wider palette. And again, those two things that they're both delineated by and joined by the music. The film deals with some very dark material. I mean, the father is taken away, he's imprisoned, there is death in this story, but it's told through the eyes of this young and very courageous girl. And weirdly enough, because it's seen through the eyes of that character, very dark material is kind of filtered for an audience of all ages. It's a 12A certificate film, and it's very specifically designed to be able to talk about these things to audiences of all ages. And I really think it does. It also has humor. And you remember that thing that, in the young, humor and bravery are often partners. They walk hand in hand. It's executive produced by Angelina Jolie, who apparently did much more than lend her name to the project. She was actually kind of guiding light in many of the creative decisions. Was nominated for Oscar for Best Animated Feature, lost out to Coco, which we were just talking about before. And again, why I'm saying, golden age of animation. I've seen it 3 times, and I've just been knocked out by it more each time. It's just wonderful, and it's called The Breadwinner, and you really must see it.